This morning, we had the opportunity to hear from folks from across not only my district, but impacted families who have lost loved ones at Delaney Hall through this unjust actions that our government has been taking against our communities. Today, you're going to not only hear from a couple, my colleague, my fellow New Jersey delegation member, Rob Menendez, but also our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who took time to meet with our community to learn firsthand the impact that these unjust policies are having, the impact that medical neglect, medical abuse is having on individuals, and to hear from the family members of two individuals who lost their lives associated with Delaney Hall. I want to hand it first to, of course, also acknowledge the mayors and city council members of Morris Township, and Dover, who have joined with us today to make sure that the voices of impacted communities are actually heard. But before I hand it to Doña Margarita Cielo Balbuena, I want to hand it to my colleague, Representative Rob Menendez.
Well, good morning. I want to thank Congresswoman Mejia for bringing us together to create the opportunity for myself, for Leader Jeffries, to hear directly from the families most impacted by what's happening at Delaney Hall and across our great state and our great country. When Delaney Hall opened last year, I said outside of it that no one is safe in Trump's America. And when you hear from these families, from the mayors of impacted communities, you know that every day that's a reality. And the work that we have to do is continue to create awareness amongst all Americans about what's happening, because the narrative coming out of the Trump administration has been a lie from day one. The people that you're going to hear from, the people that we heard from upstairs, are not the worst of the worst. They're people who on average have been here for over 20 years, have contributed to our communities every single day that they've been present in this great state. They have raised incredible children who are U.S. citizens. Heard from Mr. Edwin Lopez Cornejo's family today. His 12-year-old daughter will not have her father. That's a reality that every American has to grapple with. It's certainly one that I struggle with every single day in the work that we are doing. Because if this is what's happening in New Jersey, then we have to ask ourselves what's happening across the country. In places like Louisiana and Texas, where there may not be the amount of oversight that we've been able to do here at Delaney Hall and Elizabeth Detention Center. And as we center this conversation, as we are today, around those most impacted by what this administration is doing, the question then for every American is, will they allow this to continue? Or will they speak up against it and demand that we move out of this national nightmare towards brighter tomorrows and truly fulfill the promise of this country? Myself, Leader Jeffries, and Congresswoman Mejia, and the rest of our New Jersey delegation are committed to that. And we're going to work with all of you to make it a reality as quickly as we can. So thank you again, Congresswoman Leader, and I look forward to you all hearing from these families.
Now I want to introduce my constituent, Doña Margarita Cielo Balbuena. Doña Margarita was detained at the Elizabeth Detention Center, and when I went to visit Doña Margarita, in an instant I could see that she was unwell. After a few questions, I learned that she was being given, in effect, a quarter of her diabetes medication. I want you to think about what our government is doing to human beings, that we would treat each other with such callousness, that we would allow a human being to suffer, knowing that they are deteriorating in a preventable way. Her doctor was not contacted, her pharmacy was not contacted, and her family was ignored. It was only after the pressure that members of Congress can bring, because we are one of the few individuals that have been allowed, that have oversight ability in these detention centers, that we were able to get her medication. But that was luck of the draw, and it should not be this way. And I want to say to everyone, irrespective of your immigration status, it matters It matters if our government can treat individuals with such callousness. It matters if our government, in effect, is denying people their due process and equal protection rights, and in many ways handing them a death sentence, a slow death sentence, through their inability to treat human beings with the dignity they deserve. I want to again bring up Doña Margarita Cielo Balbuena and her translator, Carol Ruiz, from Wind of the Spirit.
Me llamo Margarita Cielo Balbuena. El 23 de mayo sufrí gas pimienta, gran temor, abuso físico a manos de agentes de migración.
My name is Margarita Cielo Balbuena. On the 23rd of May, I suffered pepper gas, great terror, and physical abuse at the hands of immigration agents.
También fui testigo de abuso físico a mi esposo, Filemón Ruiz, como a mi hijo Osmar a manos de agentes de migración.
I also had to bear witness to the physical abuse against my husband, Filemón Ruiz, and my son, Osmar, at the hands of these immigration agents.
Los agentes bloquearon la calle, de inmediato se acercaron a nuestra camioneta de manera agresiva.
The agents blocked the street and approached the truck in a very aggressive manner.
Yo ni sabía quién eran, no se identificaron como agentes de migración y no tenían tenían caras tapadas con lentes oscuros, máscaras.
I didn't know who they were. They had their faces blocked with masks and dark glasses. They didn't identify themselves as immigration agents.
Mi hijo Osmar es ciudadano estadounidense. Él les exigió ver una orden judicial, pero ellos nunca mostraron ninguna orden.
My son, Osmar, is a United States citizen. He demanded to see a judicial warrant, but they never showed any such order.
Nos tiraron gas pimienta, me quitaron mi teléfono a la fuerza, sacaron a mi esposo a la fuerza, lo tiraron al suelo entre 4 agentes.
They sprayed us with pepper gas. They took my husband forcefully out of the car and threw him to the ground, 4 agents on top of him.
Mi esposo está recién operado de la columna, el hombro, el tobillo. Mi hijo les gritó.
My husband has recently had surgery on his spinal column, on his shoulder, on his ankle. My son yelled at them about this.
En inglés que mi esposo estaba delicado y no les importó.
He yelled at them in English that my husband was in a fragile condition. They did not care.
Le doblaron las rodillas, él todavía estaba quejándose.
They folded his knees. He was screaming in pain.
Les pido que sean campeones de un cambio a la ley de migración. Necesitamos una vía a la ciudadanía para todos quienes estamos presentes por 7 años o más en este país y que paren las redadas y la inmigración aterroriza a Dover.
I ask that you be champions of a change in the immigration laws. We need a path to citizenship for those of us that have been present at least 7 years in this country. We need a stop to these raids that immigration is using to terrorize Dover.
No es justo que yo esté en este país desde el 1989, pago mis impuestos, soy dueña de casa, dueña de negocio, que le doy trabajo a otras, que tengo a mis hijos, a mis nietos nacidos acá, que igual sufren el dolor físico y psicológico.
It is not just that someone like me, who has been in this country since 1989, who pays taxes, who is a homeowner, a business owner, who gives work to others, someone who has children and grandchildren who are born in this country, that I have to suffer the psychological and physical abuse.
Más humillación que es un arresto violento y a la vida de una cárcel de inmigración.
And that I have to also suffer the humiliation that is the violent arrest and detention in an immigration detention center.
Sufrí 2 meses de cárcel en el centro de detención de Elizabeth. Nos daban leche dañada, cortada.
I suffered 2 months of detention in the Elizabeth Detention Center. They gave us spoiled milk, rotten, spoiled food.
También comida dañada, olía mal, se veía que el pollo estaba pasado, un pollo comprimido.
They gave us spoiled food that smelled bad. You could tell it was expired. Chicken patties that
Con sabor rancio.
had a rancid flavor.
A una mujer embarazada no la llevaron al doctor de citas de control de embarazo.
A pregnant woman with me was not taken for her prenatal visits.
A otra mujer vi que se quejaba de dolor de muela, no la llevaron al doctor por 5 días.
Another woman was complaining about a pain in her tooth, and they would not even bring her to the doctor for at least 5 days.
Al día 6 solo la llevaron a la enfermería de centro para que se enjuagara la boca y tomara Tylenol nada más.
Finally, on day 6, they took her to the infirmary in the center, but just to wash out her mouth and give her Tylenol, nothing else.
Aún ahora me siento traumada por esta experiencia. Me da miedo manejar, me da miedo salir.
Even now, I feel traumatized by this experience. I'm afraid to drive. I'm afraid to leave.
Me da miedo salir a la calle.
I'm afraid to leave and go out in the street.
Me da miedo dejar a mi esposo solo, aparte
I'm
de mis
afraid
hijos.
to leave my son, my husband. I'm afraid to be away from my children.
Se me hace difícil dormir, se me hace muy difícil hablar de lo que he sufrido.
It is very difficult for me to sleep. It is difficult for me to talk about what I have suffered.
Ningún ser humano debería sufrir lo que yo sufrí.
No human being should suffer what I suffered.
Todavía quedan personas dentro de ese centro de detención sufriendo.
There are still people inside that detention center suffering.
Ya por muchísimos meses.
Now for many, many months.
A mi hijo el pequeño está traumado.
My young son, my smaller son, he's traumatized.
Sufre mucho, ahorita le está dando mucha depresión.
He's depressed.
Necesitamos que ustedes por favor se fortalezcan en contra de estas políticas y prácticas inhumanas.
We need you to strengthen yourselves against this inhumane policies and practices.
Muchas gracias por escucharnos, tomarnos en cuenta y que Dios los bendiga a todos.
Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you so much for thinking of us, and may God bless you.
Gracias. Y to the press, we will now, well, first I want to introduce Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who did not hesitate for a moment when I asked him to come meet the families in my district, to come meet the families in New Jersey who are suffering under unjust and inhumane policies. Without further ado, Leader, please join us.
Good morning. Thank you, Congresswoman Mejia, for your tremendous leadership and advocacy during this fraught moment, for extending the invitation to me to sit and talk, along with Congresswoman Rob Menendez, with families in your community, families in the state of New Jersey who've been subject to ICE's unjust and inhumane behavior. Thankful to the mayors who have joined us here today, of course, as I mentioned, to Congressman Menendez for his tremendous leadership, and of course to Pastor Carter and the Calvary Baptist Church family for hosting us, as well as all of the members of the clergy who are here for continuing to be a shelter in the time of storm. Taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the people of this community, this state, and throughout our country. Instead, taxpayer dollars are being used by ICE and Donald Trump's violent mass deportation machine to brutalize and kill American citizens and law-abiding immigrant families. Donald Trump lied to the American people. He said that immigration enforcement in this country was going to target the worst of the worst. That's not what has been happening. Immigration enforcement, ICE's violent, out of control, and unhinged behavior are are targeting people who are paying taxes, people who are homeowners, people who are raising families in this community and all across our country. ICE's violent behavior is targeting business owners, job creators, people who are contributing to the local economy, to the state economy, and to the country's economy. Donald Trump lied to the American people. He's hurting the American people. And the behavior that ICE is engaging in is inconsistent with our values and what America should represent. Immigration enforcement in this country should be fair, just, and humane. That's not what's happening. As was so powerfully communicated by family after family after family here today. ICE detention centers, including Delaney Hall, which I've visited, are engaging in un-American behavior. That includes the lack of adequate medical treatment to people who are oftentimes experiencing severe illness, including individuals who are being held in these detention facilities, women who are pregnant, not getting the lack of care that they need. We've consistently learned, including during the roundtable today, about the rancid food that is being provided to individuals who are being detained, to the unsanitary living conditions, and to the indecency by which many individuals, including at Delaney Hall, are treating the individuals who have been rounded up, often violently, by ICE agents who've been unleashed throughout this country as part of Donald Trump's violent mass deportation machine. The activity that we've continued to learn about is unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American, which is why dramatic change is necessary in this country with respect to the manner in which immigration enforcement is taking place. We do need comprehensive immigration reform along the lines of what Margarita has courageously talked about, and where we know there's no ability by these immigration officials or private companies to behave in a manner consistent with American values, and that certainly is the case at Delaney Hall, that Delaney Hall needs to be shut down. And that will remain a high priority for us until it takes place. So I thank the families who we heard from for your courage, for your bravery, for your resilience. We will get this situation turned around, and we will make sure that there's justice for your loved ones who have been killed or died in custody. 3 deaths at Delaney Hall, completely and totally unacceptable. 55 deaths in ICE custody since the beginning of Donald Trump's time in office over the last 17 months or so. That means 1 death in ICE custody every 6 days. That is not America, and that's why we're committed to turning the situation around.
All right, we could open to a few questions. Again, I want to share that we have the mayor of Morris Township, Morristown. We have council members from Dover, all of whom have experienced and witnessed the escalation of ICE and DHS activity that puts American people in danger. We also have family members of those who have lost their lives at Delaney Hall and, of course, impacted community.
First, and some perished. We don't even know how many, but we could say thousands. Is there any possibility of having a conversation about what we've done in other generations when people act in that civic way, that patriotic way, without benefit of paper, to fast track them and keep that promise that they kept to us?
Well, I don't know if y'all who have actually been in Congress longer than I have been, but I will say that it behooves the American people, behooves our economy, it behooves our communities to ensure that we are creating a pathway to citizenship for all of those who are law-abiding, who have been contributing. You have heard stories of business owners, family members, people who are enriching our community, and they deserve a way in which they could remain safe, be contributing members of our society. And I agree that we are asking people, in fact, people are willingly giving all of themselves to improve our community, and the least we can do is treat them with the humanity, dignity, and uphold our laws. Leader or my colleague, Rob, do you want to say more?
Well, I think Analilia touched on most of it. I think, as the leader touched on, right, this administration has used a broken immigration system to enact its inhumane immigration enforcement that you see every day and that families have spoken to today. And if there's ever a moment in our country's history where we have to take meaningful collective action to fix our broken immigration system, the moment is now. The moment was years ago, but when you see what's happening, you see the impacted individuals and families. I don't know how any member of Congress, Republican or Democrat, could not say we have to finally do the work to fix this. Now, how we do so is going to be a robust conversation that I look forward to being a part of with these incredible colleagues, but it needs to happen because despite how long, I think it's 15 years that the GEO Group has a contract with ICE over $1 billion for Delaney Hall, I do not intend to continue to go to Delaney Hall and see the individuals that I've seen, mothers and fathers of U.S. citizen children, pregnant women, a pastor from Elizabeth, people with serious medical conditions, people who are small business owners. That cannot be the future of this country, and we are all committed to doing that which is necessary to turn this page on this dark moment that we've seen.
We're going to proceed guided by several principles. I think the American people are unified behind the notion that violent criminals here unlawfully should be deported consistent with our laws. At the same period of time, America is a nation of immigrants. That is part of what has made this country exceptional. And there are people clearly who are being violently targeted, law-abiding immigrant families being violently targeted by ICE enforcement activity in ways that undermine community, this state, and this country. We're going to operate under the principle that immigration enforcement in this country should be fair, just, and humane. And that's not what's happening right now in America. ICE is completely and totally and violently out of control and needs to be reined in the most dramatic way possible. And that is our intention. We also recognize that immigration and the system in this country is broken and it needs to be fixed. And we believe it needs to be fixed in a comprehensive and bipartisan way for the good of everyone in this country.
Just a reminder that not all questions should be on topic, please.
Yes, okay.
Bill Westham, Daily Record, Bergen Record, USA Today.
How you doing, Bill?
There's obviously been a lot of criticism about the training of the ICE officers in terms of enforcement, and we're hearing more and more about the substandard care
folks are in custody. I wanted to drill down on that just a little bit more specific. Can anyone speak to staffing issues in terms of healthcare staffing issues at Delaney Hall? Are there doctors? Are there nurses? Are there physician assistants? Is it a clinic, an emergency room? What can or can they not do?
So Rob, help me with this, but there is a clinic usually staffed mostly by nurses and physician assistants and one physician. We know that individuals who are reporting an illness have to report it either on a piece of paper or through a tablet. We have repeatedly heard that individuals will submit that paperwork or submit a complaint on the tablet, and it takes days for their care to be, or their issue to be addressed. And often, what the medical care that they quote unquote receive is minimal. Maybe they get a Tylenol. As Doña Margarita shared, she witnessed an individual who had a toothache that was just essentially given mouthwash and a Tylenol or very over-the-counter minimal medication. Rob?
Yeah, and the other thing, just to as you know, but it has to be stated every time we have this conversation, is the GEO Group, who all of the medical professionals are GEO employees, is a for-profit enterprise. And so if you tune into their quarterly earnings reports, they're talking about how this is some of the most profitable years that they've ever seen. So how can that be? Well, obviously the Trump administration is giving billions of dollars out to organizations like the GEO Group, but they're also trying to maximize profit every single day. They've been talking about bringing on a second physician to Delaney Hall. That has not happened yet. The day that Mr. Lopez Cornejo passed, there was no physician on site. These are the types of things that we have raised over and over again, and you're seeing the dire consequences of them not being able to adequately provide health care to the individuals that they are bringing through Delaney Hall and Elizabeth Detention Center.
Okay, can I just specify what you're saying is that there is not a physician usually on site or ever on site?
No, there's one physician who's on site, who's there when we do our oversight visits, but it's not 24/7. So what they will do is if he's unavailable to be there in person, they will have another physician on call. But if you have a medical emergency, the people that are attending to that individual are either nurses or physician assistants.
Thank you, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, Fred Snell, 5 Insider NJ.
How you doing, Fred?
Hi, how are you? Realistically, what can you do to fix things unless you get the majority in November?
Well, first and foremost, it's important that we share what's happening within our government. Here's the bottom line. Our United States government is taking a group of people, many of which had either legal status up until recently, those with TPS protections, or those who are in the middle of their process, otherwise law-abiding people. And they're being put in essentially institutions that are prison-like and being treated in a way that is costing them their lives. Every American should care, because if our government is able to strip individuals of due process, equal protection, treat them in such a way that it could cost them their lives, then our government can do that to every single one of us. So first and foremost, we need to give voice to what is occurring. Myself, members of the New Jersey delegation, have been working with community organizations, asking to understand the names and information of individuals we know are chronically ill and being detained, one, so that we could visit them, so that we can make sure that they know that they're not alone, and that we are gathering this information and submitting it so that we create the kind of accountability that every single American wants of their government.
Dr. King once said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And every American, as Analilia has indicated, should be concerned with the grave injustice that has unfolded as a result of Donald Trump's violent mass deportation machine. The violence, the brutality, the inhumanity of it all, the lack of medical care, the refusal to treat people with dignity and respect. This is not what America should be all about. And it's not who we are as Americans. It's all inconsistent with the best of this country. And so we're going to continue to proceed with the intensity that has taken place during the Trump administration as House Democrats to deliver as much change as we can under these conditions. And I think Margarita's presence here today is an example of what happens when there's aggressive action and oversight, brought about, of course, by Representative Mejia. Rob Menendez and his leadership and advocacy, along with Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, has led to improving the situation and exposing injustice for individual after individual after individual. At the same time, we need bold, dramatic, systemic change. And that is certainly an ongoing project that we are committed to delivering in this country.
I've got kind of a follow-on to that, also for Leader Jeffries, Joey Fox, Politico. If Democrats do regain the majority in November, you're sort of talking about accountability here and oversight here. What does that literally look like? You know, what, in the first couple of months of a hypothetical Democratic majority, what are you doing? What hearings are you holding? What are you trying to look into?
Well, we've broadly made clear that we're fighting for an affordable America, that we recognize in this state, in this area, and in this country, life is far too expensive for everyone, and that we're committed to addressing the high cost of living, to addressing the fact that the current administration promised to lower costs on day one. Costs haven't gone down, they've gone up, and that far too many people, far too many Americans, they're working hard, they're playing by the rules, they can't thrive, and they can barely survive. That should not be the case here in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. So we're fighting for an affordable America. We're committed to lowering the cost of groceries and gas and housing. We're committed to bringing about affordable health care for every single American. And we're also committed to bringing about accountability. With an administration that has unleashed corruption, and as a result of its violent mass deportation machine, brutality on American citizens and law-abiding immigrant families at the same time. This is one of the reasons why everyone should be concerned. American citizens have been killed as well, as of course, tragically was the case in Minneapolis with both Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. So we're committed to an affordability agenda, and we're committed to an accountability agenda.
So just to be clear,
And we've brought it about, we've made clear that Delaney Hall should be shut down and will be shut down. And that's the reality of the situation. And by the way, I think it's fair to say that the overwhelming majority of House Democrats believe that a system of private detention is inconsistent with who we are as a country. Because when you have private detention facilities, their behavior is not being driven by treating people in a manner consistent with the law or their health or their well-being. It's driven by profits. And the more inhumane behavior, I think it's fair to say, the greater the profit. And that's part of the reality that I think we've seen firsthand in Delaney Hall.
Last question.
Speaker Jeffries, it's probably not, excuse me, sorry, Leader Jeffries. My name's Tracy.
I was okay the first time around.
I was just used to it. I'm sure it's not lost on you that in New Jersey here, that there have been some significant wins from the progressive left. Congresswoman Mejia down in 12, Dr. Hamaway, both of whom have called for abolishing ICE.
And replacing.
Okay.
I mean, it matters.
So, and given the DSA wins that we're seeing in these primaries across the country, how should the Democratic Party, your leadership, pivot and change to respond to voters, what they're maybe telling you about what they're thinking? Particularly, I mean, you're here in 11. How should the party change?
Well, at 215 members of the House Democratic Caucus, when we are at full strength, we expect that that number will grow in the aftermath of the midterm elections that are going to take place on November 3rd. And of course, we'll have a conversation about what dramatic change looks like in terms of the immigration enforcement that's taken place in this country. And as I've mentioned repeatedly, because this is what unites the entirety of the House Democratic Caucus family, from progressives to New Dems to Blue Dogs and all points in between, because it unites the country, is that immigration enforcement should be fair, just, and humane in this country. We do want a safe and secure and strong border. That's also, of course, incredibly important to the American people. And we have a broken immigration system, and it needs to be fixed. And it should be fixed in a comprehensive and bipartisan way. And so we've got an immigration working group that is being led by Chairman Pete Aguilar, who has convened every aspect of the House Democratic Caucus to specifically articulate both our values and our policy proposals with respect to the type of dramatic change that is necessary.
I just want, real quickly, do you see the possibility of reviving the bipartisan bill that was tanked by Trump 2 years ago as a, something to go forward under Democratic control of the House?
I think Donald Trump and Republicans have shown, unfortunately, that they're not serious about engaging in the serious matter of legislating to resolve the challenges that the country confronts. So this effort is going to have to be led by House Democrats, as has been the case in the minority in a variety of different ways, including making sure that we've run both Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem out of town in the minority. And of course, we'll continue to bring about that level of accountability if the American people give us the opportunity to govern in the majority, as I suspect they will.
Okay, well, thank you. Las gracias para los medios de habla hispana. Cerramos con, hoy escuchamos de las familias que están siendo impactadas por un sistema migratorio que es cruel, que le niega la humanidad a todos. Estamos aquí reunidos no solo en un lugar de esperanza, pero con líderes de Dover, de Morris Township, que conocen el impacto que este sistema está teniendo en nuestras familias. Le doy las gracias a mi compañero Rob Menendez y al líder Hakeem Jeffries por venir a escuchar a estas familias y utilizar esa información para mejor abogar por nuestra gente. I want to close by saying, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you to not only the leader, my colleague, Rob Menendez, Leader Jeffries, like I said, did not hesitate for a moment to come listen to impacted community, and I thank you for that. And again, my colleague who has been fighting for at this point, we'll say years, on behalf of all communities. I also want to thank the mayor of Morristown, the mayor of Morris Township, the council members from Dover who have been able to not only listen to families, but to also share with the leader the impact that this rise in unjust activity is having in all of our communities and how it puts us all at risk. So again, thank you. And finally, I'll close again by thanking the Calvary Baptist Church family and Pastor Carter for immediately offering a place of solace and community so that families could speak. Gracias, and with that we close.